Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Gospel Defenders Ministry. I'm Adam Gray, and this evening we're gonna be in Genesis. We're gonna talk about faith and what that looks like. Now, in Genesis chapter 22, we know the story of Abraham and Isaac, and I'm gonna read some scriptures, but I'm gonna just lay it out for you. God told Abraham to take his son Isaac, go up to a mountain, Mount Moriah, I think it was, and offer him up as a burnt offering, a sacrifice. Abraham did it. Abraham didn't ask him why. He just went up there. So now I'm going to read some in chapter 22 of Genesis, starting in verse 1. Now it came about after these things that God tested Abraham. Now remember that. Remember that word, tested. God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. He said, Take now your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I will tell you. So Abraham rose early in the morning and saddled his donkey and took two of his young men with him, and Isaac and his son, and he split wood for the burnt offering, and arose and went to the place of which God had told him. On the third day, Abraham raised his eyes and saw the place from a distance. Abraham said to his young men, Stay here with the donkey. I and the lad will go over there, and we will worship and return to you. Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son, and he took in his hand the fire and the knife. So the two of them walked on together. Isaac spoke to Abraham, his father, and said, My father. And he said, Here I am, my son. And he said, Behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Abraham said, God will provide for himself the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. So the two of them walked on together. Then they came to the place on which God had told him, and Abraham built the altar there, and arranged the wood, and bound his son Isaac, and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Abraham stretched out his hand, and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. He said, Do not stretch out your hand against the lad, and do nothing to him, for now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. Then Abraham raised his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in the thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering in place of his son. Abraham called up the name of the place, The Lord will provide, as it is to this day, in the mount of the Lord it will be provided. So, how many times have we felt the Lord was leading us to do something, to make a decision, and it was a life-changing decision? It could be a change in career. It could be changing jobs. It could be anything. And, we're thinking about it. We're praying about it. We're going to the Lord for guidance. The Holy Spirit leads us to make the change. And it could be as simple as the Lord getting you to go on a mission trip. But anything like that. So we, as Christians, we either can say, okay, I trust you. I'm riding with you. Let's do this. Or, I don't know about that. So, when you become a Christian and you're a follower of Christ, you really don't have to tell God. Some people say, God, I'll do anything you want me to. Well, be careful when you say that, because God will test you on it. And God tests us. But you're following him, so, you're going to go where he leads you to. Or you should. As Christians, we should. So, and sometimes it's difficult to do. Sometimes people get cold feet. Well, God, I'll do anything you want me to except that. Well, God doesn't work that way. And I know that from experience, but we won't talk about that. And so we step out, we do it, And, we don't have any bad feelings. We're not nervous or anything. And then after a little while, things get a little bumpy. Sometimes, we wonder, did I do the right thing? Well, if you're sure God led you to do this, then you're going to be fine. He's going to get you through it. And, well, I've been through that before. Now, you see, with Abraham and Isaac, if you read there, followed along with me, what Abraham was being tested. And the test was for Abraham. And it was also a learning opportunity. And then, but Isaac, the test was to Abraham, but it was kind of for Isaac, because Isaac was witnessing this. He was seeing the faith that his father had in God, because he asked him, all right, we got the wood, we got the fire, we got the knife. Where's the lamb? Huh? Where'd it go? He's looking around. He said, we don't have anything. Abraham said, God will provide, and he did. So Abraham passed the test. God knew, well, he knew anyway, but that Abraham was going to do it because he's God. But Isaac needed to see that, and sometimes taking a test reassures us in our faith when we're tested. Now, another key thing to note is that Abraham was fixing to give up his son. Okay, you fast forward a little bit in the Gospels. God gave his only begotten son to die for so we all might be saved. You see, there's a parallel there. But now we do what the Lord led us, where our faith never stops. When we come to Christ, our faith starts, and it should never stop. But sometimes we say, well, I don't know. I'm a little worried about this. And did I make the right decision? Well, if you're positive, Holy Spirit was talking to you. And you can only know by faith. We have to strengthen our faith, and these tests and these trials, elsewhere in the Bible, it calls it trials and tribulations. Those are tests to see if we're going to cling to God and, say, okay, God, I know you're going to get me through this. And, He will. If He leads us to do something, He's just not going to drop us off at the corner and say, okay, you're on your own. I'll see you later. He's not going to do that. He sees us the whole way through. And our faith in Him is dependent on our whole lives, our very lives. If we people say, well, I took a leap of faith. And, you got to. But once, when you take a leap of faith, when you step out on faith, you shouldn't step back. You got to see it through. And God's going to see it through with you. And sometimes that's difficult, but our faith is what gets us through a lot of things. And we can't waver on that. And we're going to get tested. And that's how we grow and mature spiritually as Christians, by tests and trials and tribulations. And it's easy to say, but when you're in the thick of it, then it's that's a different thing. Sometimes God leads us to stuff. Sometimes things just happen. And Mary and I have known several people that without faith, it would have been much, much worse. And the world doesn't understand that. They think, oh, it just all worked out for the best. Well, it all worked out. It's a good thing. Yeah, it did all work out for the best, and yeah, it did work out. It worked out because of God. But they don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that at all. The world doesn't want to have anything to do with God. Nothing. And that goes back to the fall. I mean, I've said it so many times before. Anything that we're dealing with today and anything in the scriptures, we can always bring it back to Genesis, to the starting point, not necessarily the fall, but other things. And Genesis was the beginning. And well, I mean, in the first verse of the first chapter, it says, "In the beginning." So, hope everybody enjoyed this. Hope it's helped some people. So it's always pray to help the Lord strengthen your faith, and He will, and you're gonna get tested. Well, hope everybody has a good week. It has been a while since I have done a message, and I will try to be more regular with that. And I think I've said that before, but I need to get on the stick, get this going. But thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. And hope everybody has a blessed week. Tell somebody you love them, and God bless.